I used to think laughter was the glue that held us together. Sarah and I had been married for 8 years, and for most of them, her laugh was my favorite sound. It was the kind that filled a room, unrestrained, contagious, pure. But somewhere along the way, that laugh changed. It stopped being something we shared and became something she used against me. It started small. Light jokes about how I dressed, how I'd forget my wallet, how I wasn't ambitious enough. I'd laugh it off because that's what you do when the person you love teases you. You tell yourself it's harmless. But little by little, it became sharper, more public, more humiliating. At dinner parties, she'd tell stories that painted me as some bumbling idiot. Everyone would laugh, even I would, trying to keep the peace. But every time, a little piece of respect chipped away. When I'd bring it up later, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke." I started to notice how often she used that line. It's just a joke. It became her shield, her way of excusing cruelty disguised as humor. I worked long hours as a project coordinator, nothing glamorous but steady. I made sure the bills were paid, the house ran smoothly, the small things were taken care of. Meanwhile, she'd scroll social media, comparing our lives to influencers and friends who seemed to live shinier, more exciting versions of reality. One Friday night, she came home late from a girls' outing. Her perfume hit the air before she did. She dropped her bag on the counter, tossed her heels aside, and with a smirk said, "You wouldn't last a day without me." It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the tone, mocking, final, or maybe it was the tiredness in my bones from years of being her punchline. I smiled weakly and said, "You think so?" She laughed, poured herself a glass of wine, and waved me off. "Please, you'd probably forget how to eat if I wasn't around to remind you." The next morning, I woke up before her. The sunlight was cutting through the blinds, illuminating the quiet mess of our living room. I made coffee and sat there thinking about her words. "You wouldn't last a day without me." I realized I'd been living on autopilot, doing everything I could to make things easier for her, hoping she'd see the effort and maybe, just maybe, love me the way she used to. But love doesn't survive on effort alone. It needs respect, kindness, partnership. So I decided to test her theory. Over the next few days, I started pulling back quietly. I stopped reminding her of appointments. I didn't refill the gas in her car. I didn't fix the small things around the house. I let her handle the things I'd been managing for years without acknowledgement. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy, too sure of her own independence. But by midweek, small cracks began to show. She forgot to pay the electric bill. The laundry piled up. The car broke down because she'd ignored the oil light for weeks. When she called me at work, annoyed, asking why the payment hadn't gone through, I said calmly, "Oh, I thought you said you didn't need me." There was silence on the line. That night, she came home quiet. No jokes, no laughter. Just a strained tension floating between us. I could feel her frustration but also confusion, like she was suddenly seeing the invisible hands that kept her world steady. By Thursday, I had made up my mind. I packed a small suitcase, left her a note on the kitchen counter, and walked out the door before sunrise. The note simply said, "You told me to leave." I finally listened. I checked into a modest motel on the edge of town, took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, felt light. No jokes, no mockery. Just silence and the sound of my own breathing. What I didn't expect was how quickly her world would start unraveling once I was gone. It only took 2 days for the first message to appear. "Sarah, are you coming home tonight? The Wi-Fi isn't working and I can't get the garage door to open." I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. I didn't. A few hours later, another message followed. "Sarah, this isn't funny, James. You can't just disappear like this." The irony almost made me laugh. For years she'd made jokes at my expense. And now, when the laughter stopped, she didn't know what to do with the silence. I spent the weekend at the motel, sleeping late, eating simple food, taking walks without anyone criticizing how I folded a napkin or stirred my coffee. I realized how quiet peace actually sounds. By Monday, my phone was filled with missed calls and half-angry, half-desperate texts. The bills hadn't been paid. The washing machine had overflowed. Her car still wouldn't start. She even had to call a plumber when the kitchen sink backed up. All things I used to handle without her noticing. I didn't reply. I went to work, kept my head down, and told no one. On Wednesday night, I finally got a long message from her. No sarcasm this time, just raw panic. "James, please. I can't do this alone. Everything's a mess. I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't mean it." I read it twice. My heart wanted to believe her, but my mind reminded me of all the nights she'd mocked me in front of friends. All the times she'd told me to toughen up. All the times she'd dismissed my feelings as oversensitivity. So I didn't go back. Not yet. A week later, one of her friends, Amy, called me. "She's falling apart, James. She's embarrassed to admit it, but she can't keep up. She's realizing how much you did for her." I just said, "Everyone learns in their own time." The next evening, I saw Sarah's car parked outside my motel. She sat there for 10 minutes before finally knocking on my door. When I opened it, she looked nothing like the woman who used to smirk at my expense. Her eyes were tired, her makeup streaked. She was holding a grocery bag, coffee, my favorite chips, the small things she never used to notice. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of the bed, fiddling with her ring. "I didn't realize how much you handled," she said. "I thought I was being funny. I didn't know it was hurting you." I looked at her, and for the first time she didn't look proud or untouchable. She looked human, scared, humbled, smaller. "It wasn't the jokes," I said quietly. "It was that you stopped respecting me." Tears slipped down her face. "I want to fix it." I nodded slowly. "I believe you want to, but I don't think you know how yet. You need time to figure out who you are without someone cleaning up behind you." She flinched like the words had weight. "So that's it. For now," I said. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I just need peace, and you need perspective." She left the coffee on the table and walked out silently. Watching her go hurt, but it didn't destroy me. There's a strange kind of freedom in realizing someone's laughter no longer defines your worth. A month passed. I rented a small apartment closer to work. I started cooking again, joined a gym, reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. Every once in a while, Sarah would text small updates, photos of the dog, questions about the mortgage. I'd respond politely but never with the old warmth. Then one afternoon, I received a final message. "Sarah, I understand now. It wasn't that you couldn't live without me. It was that I couldn't live without the man I turned into a joke. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Some apologies don't need an audience. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker against the sky. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. People think revenge always has to be loud. Doors slamming, voices raised, chaos left behind. But sometimes the most powerful revenge is silence. Leaving someone to face the world they built without the person who held it together. Sarah had mocked me for being too sensitive. Maybe I was. But sensitivity was never my weakness. It was what kept me kind, patient, and present, even when she wasn't. In the end, her laughter faded, and my peace grew louder. And that's when I realized, sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's finally standing up.